Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining Policy and Profits. I'm Anthony Esposito of Ascalon 6 Capital, drudging through the day and the week, and we have EJ Antoni with us, lead economist at the Heritage Foundation, and potentially we'll have a new title, potentially, moving forward. We'll talk about that today. EJ, how are you today?
I am hanging in. It has been a crazy couple of days, to say the least. Ever since Friday, the wheels kind of seems like the wheels came off the bus.
They are wobbling for sure, and they have been for a while. Sometimes we're riding on the rims, sometimes we're cruising along. I think we're somewhere in between right now. I noticed, there's been a lot of conversation about tariffs, a lot of conversation about the market. The market we'll get to in a little bit. We haven't done any charting at all, but we're doing that today. Tariffs, taxes, the big beautiful bill, trade deals, Russia, Ukraine, everything. But we haven't really gotten into the statistics. We haven't really gotten in until this week. We haven't really talked about, you and I have, but the broader conversation has not been on how accurate or inaccurate are the statistics in the United States. So this kind of backs into the conversation of what exactly is Jerome Powell looking at, if anything. And if he is looking at data, which I don't truly believe he is, and I know you agree, we've talked about this for almost a year now. If he is looking at the data, how accurate is the data? You were on C-SPAN going into this. The BLS jobs numbers are and have been consistently off and way off for over a year now. Whether nefarious or not, it's garbage in, garbage out. And we're still talking about the numbers as if they mean something. So I want to go right to the cut of what our producer, and I'm going to grab it, the EJ Smackdown. Let's see what this looked like and then go into the conversation.
As far as the firing of the BLS commissioner goes, that person has overseen problems in the data for 3 years now. I and many others, not just me, many folks have been pointing out that since the spring of 2022, there have been serious problems with the BLS data. And that has been confirmed by the fact that the BLS will publish one series of numbers and then later publish another series of numbers that contradicts it. And sure enough, that latter series is actually used to adjust those monthly jobs numbers. And that's why we had, for example, in the last year, we had this massive annual revision where we had to subtract hundreds of thousands of jobs from the figures that we thought we had. And so that problem is continuing to this day. Again, just last week, we got data from the BLS, more accurate data, that shows that in the last quarter of 2024, the jobs numbers were overestimated by hundreds of thousands. So there are clearly problems with the numbers. You can look at, for example, the survey response rate for those monthly jobs numbers. It has plummeted. It's down to only 42%. So more than half of the businesses that we're surveying every month to ask about the jobs numbers, we don't even get responses from. Of course, you're going to have problems with that kind of data. And clearly, if this person was not able to correct those issues, then we should give somebody else a chance.
So that's a good point. And then I'm gonna totally back up and let you talk through this because this is great. Give somebody else a chance. So I'm scratching my head yesterday. I'm trading crude. I'm trading S&Ps. I'm trading gold. I'm enjoying enjoying the flow and the chaos of the market. And then a news story pops up and it's that somebody else who are we thinking could possibly lead the BLS? And I get this Bloomberg article, which I thought was so great. This is a handsome devil who clearly has a good grip on economic statistics and how to move forward and fix this problem. I want to just pull that graphic up for a second so everyone can see one of the candidates for, look at that handsome devil.
I thought you said he was handsome. What gives?
What a good-looking young man. Congratulations on being named and being involved in the process. I could not think of a better person with better intentions and more of an ability to go and fix this issue. All kidding aside, congratulations. And please take a minute and explain what is going on there. We've talked about it really over the past year, but what's going on? What's broken? And do you think you can fix this? And how would that benefit the economy, the rate conversation, the moving forward? Like, what do we need to do to fix this? And can you do it? What's broken, first of all?
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess as far as what's going on in the story, a lot of speculation. I'll say exactly what I said to Bloomberg, which is the truth. It's not like the White House has called and said, "Hey, do you want this job?" So just just so we're all clear. But obviously, it sounds like there are folks who have put my name forward and suggested me. So, all right. So that's that situation. What's the situation at BLS? Things are broken, and I mean, I know we talked about this over a year ago, I think, Anthony, like how messed up the numbers are. BLS has a lot of problems with their data. You'll get initial numbers essentially for things like these job estimates, and then they get revised down. And okay, that's normal. And sometimes you occasionally will get large downward revisions. Again, that can be normal as long as it's not too frequent. But then you typically get some upward revisions, including sometimes a large upward revision. And that's just not what's been happening. We've been consistently getting negative revisions. Okay, so now you can say, all right, there's a negative bias, if you want to call it that, in the revisions, which means there has to be a positive bias to the initial estimates. And so what's causing that? It means that there's problems with the data collection, with the data processing at BLS. There's problems with their methodologies, with the models they're using. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that assumptions you could make in a pre-pandemic world no longer apply today. And unless you completely revamp all of that, you're going to continue to get these problems. That's why, for example, like, I mentioned in that clip, it's weird watching yourself, by the way, but I mentioned in that clip, you see an annual revision that subtracts 600,000 jobs. Yeah. Why is that? Because there's something wrong with the way you're processing the data, with the assumptions that you're making. The birth-death model has come under a lot of scrutiny. I'm still not sure that they've really corrected everything they need to. We were told that they made the corrections that were necessary, but clearly that hasn't happened given the huge monthly revisions that we just had in the July jobs report, which I think is what ultimately led to the former commissioner getting the axe. So again, if you're making these assumptions that might have held true in the past, probably did, but no longer hold true today, you're going to be off, and you're going to consistently be off in the same direction. It'd be one thing if it was only a matter of our models and everything are great, but nobody responds to the surveys, right? That 42 response rate on the surveys. If that was the only problem, though, you should have what we like to call a random walk, where you're going to have overestimations one month, underestimations another month, right? If it was simply a matter of the sample size and everything else was fine, then you should still end up with revisions that average out to very small numbers, near zero. It's still not what we're getting. We're still getting large, abnormally large, consistent downward revisions. So clearly there's something wrong. All right, so how do you fix it? I think you really need a complete overhaul at BLS. Everything going back to how they collect the data. There's no reason we should be doing phone surveys anymore in 2025, for crying out loud. Yeah. You need a complete overhaul of data collection. You need to take a long, hard look again at the models that they're using and make sure things are actually modeled to reflect reality today, not just a time in the past. And you need to make sure that systems are talking with each other. There's a lot of data that might be available right now, but can't actually get used until months in the future because systems aren't talking to each other. Databases are isolated. This is how Doge was able to find we have 150-year-old people getting Social Security checks, right? It's because you had separate databases that weren't talking to each other. And as soon as you could cross-reference things like Social Security numbers, you immediately found out, oh, there's a problem here. That's the exact same kinds of things you need to do at BLS.
So why? Look, you're a very smart guy. You're on top of your game. There's no question. But there are other smart people, presumably the people working at BLS and leading BLS and leadership know that there's a problem. They have to know there's a problem. The numbers are off. They're constantly off. The annual revision was close to 1 million jobs last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So we had the preliminary benchmark of over 800,000. Yep. The final benchmark came in at about 600,000. Okay. But that doesn't even include the monthly revisions. Right? Yeah. So all of those months were already revised down, right? You have the January report, February's report will revise January, but then March's report can also revised January. So every month can get revised twice, essentially, just in the monthly revisions and then the annual on top of that. So you put all this together, and just in the last 2.5 years, I mean, it's over 1.9 million for total downward revisions. Total.
So why haven't they fixed this?
Exactly. That's the great question.
I mean,
everybody
is it nefarious, or is it that they're just too lazy, or is it that they're just incompetent? Like what? Honestly, I mean, is it that the numbers were being baked in and cooked so that the Biden economy looks stronger, and no one paid attention to the revisions? Because they don't. They look at the headline. Even if you look at mainstream media, you look at CNBC and Bloomberg News, and they rarely will go into the revisions. And if they talk about the revision for that month, they move on. They don't talk about a cumulative revision number. They're not talking about it. So was it the type of thing where they're like, hey, we're good. We got a mask on. We're wearing a beard. Just keep the beard going. It's fine. Leave it be. I mean, there has to be some level of the level of incompetence that would need to have been exhibited by leaving this the way it was. I can't comprehend that level of incompetence. So that leads me down the path of who made the conscious decision not to fix it and why.
Right. So ultimately, like Harry Truman had the famous sign on his desk, the buck stops here, right? Ultimately, somebody's responsible, and that's the agency head is responsible for the agency. He or she is ultimately bears responsibility for this. And look, in that sense, I understand why she was fired. But the problem is when you get these kinds of errors and this kind of incompetence, as you said, it leads people to think, okay, is something nefarious going on? And to be clear, I don't have any evidence of that. Maybe there is. I don't know, though, right? I just don't have any evidence. I know some people at BLS, certainly not all of them, but the people I know are good folks. They're trying their best. They have very difficult jobs to do. No, I don't want to give the impression that compiling these statistics is easy. It's certainly not. But at the same time, it definitely seems like not enough effort was put in here. Certainly not enough was done to actually fix the problem. And that's where people start speculating, was it done? Again, was it done for nefarious purposes? Was it done for political purposes? I know the president has voiced that opinion multiple times now. But all of that aside, regardless of what anybody's motivation was, even if there was no malice at all, if it was purely incompetence, that alone is enough reason for there to be a shakeup at BLS.
Yep. That makes perfect sense. I think I think this is the buck stops here. I love it. I think, if they're running, whoever's leading the BLS, and I honestly don't know who it is. I don't know that I care. But if you have that many inaccuracies and this is being run so poorly, I don't know what the criticism is of President Trump in firing that person. You're doing a very bad job over an extended period of time. You're fired. And that's where government falls short. We let people stay because they're government employees and they just stay on forever and they don't fix the problem and they don't do a better job of it. So I think President Trump, as usual, took the bull by the horns, said, you're out, you're fired, whatever his opinion is of why it was that inaccurate, why the work was that poor. Honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. If it's that inaccurate and poor, which is factual, you can quantify those inaccuracies.
Right.
That is not subjective. He's allowed to say what he thinks. As far as I didn't know that the First Amendment was taken away from the president while he sat in office. He can say what he thinks. The bottom line is this has been inaccurate. The system's not being run. BLS is not being run properly. And we need those numbers to be better. That whoever this person is had a long time to fix the problem. They haven't fixed the problem. They're now gone. If this works out where you do move forward in conversation and you do actually end up in that position, I think the country would benefit from that. I think you'll do a fantastic job with good intention and more than enough ability to get this fixed and get this back on track, for better or worse. Whether those job numbers are consistently better or consistently worse, I don't know, but we want them to be consistently accurate, and then we can go from there.
Right, exactly. They got to be accurate, and it's not. I know a lot of people say, like, how important is BLS? Like, why is this such a big deal? Because major decision makers are using this data. They rely on it. You hit the nail on the head with that word there, Anthony. It's got to be accurate. Yeah. I mean, the Fed is looking at this to adjust their interest rate target. How many Wall Street firms are looking at this report every single month to try to adjust what they're doing in their own models that they're using in-house? So, and this is probably a great segue to, to you in the market here, where, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of emphasis on how these revisions, these huge downward revisions that we just had, where it shows, I mean, 1 month this year, we essentially added no jobs at all.
Yeah.
People are looking at that and saying, hey, the Fed is now assuredly going to cut interest rates. My big contention there is that whenever they talk about full employment, part of their mandate, right, they never are talking about jobs, like the number of jobs being added or lost, or the level of non-farm payrolls. That's that number we get every month. They're always talking about the unemployment rate, which is from a different survey. That's from the household survey, and that does not get revised the same way on a month-to-month basis that the establishment survey does, where we get the payroll figure from. So all that to say, the unemployment rate has not actually been drastically revised higher. And if that remains the case, I think we might be drastically overestimating the odds of a Fed rate hike this year. And I really would love to know your thoughts on what kind of impact that has on the market going forward. Because last year we constantly thought a rate cut was right around the corner, and it didn't materialize obviously until right before the election. But the market still kept acting like we got the rate cut anyway.
Yeah, I think the discounting mechanism of the market is really the key here. It was a massive discount in the tariff conversation. There was a shock to the system. And we had been talking about this since mid-year 24. I was very vocal and really pounding the table December and January about the fact that the market was over-levered. The market was, breadth was way too concentrated in the Mag 7 and overvalued. The peaks of valuation we're looking at, if you look at the Shiller PE, we are at or above now the peaks from 2000 heading into the tech bubble, and nothing's come close since then. So we were really in a tough spot. We were slightly below the Shiller PE peak back in December, January, February, December 24 into 25. And I think that discounting down was aggressive. It was extremely quick, extremely aggressive. And then we saw a very quick turn because it was so headline driven. And thank you. I'm glad we brought this Shiller PE chart up. You can see this goes all the way back to 1880. And if you look at the previous peak was 2000 heading into the tech bubble, that was up around 44. The red dot is kind of where we are now, right around 38. So we haven't seen levels like this since the tech bubble. And prior to that, everything was pretty much negligible if you look at the entire trend. So way overvalued. The discount, as I said, the discounting down was very aggressive. And then the discounting looking forward got very aggressive. So what were the catalysts to the hold? Well, the catalysts to the hold were trade deals were expected to come through. The uncertainty of where Trump stood or what he was looking for was starting to clear up. People didn't want to miss those momentum names on the turn, and we got a hold at what is traditionally that 20% move down, which is kind of where people who have never really been through a real bear, a tech bubble, a housing crisis, 20% seems like it's the end of the world. It's not, but everybody stepped in. Models started to adjust to what the tariffs look like, what the economic data looked like. It looked like this kind of plan was working, whether people like to talk about the positives on Trump or not. There was private investment coming back into the country. It looked like there was going to be healthy jobs growth. It looked like we were setting up to really move past the massive amount of deficit spending. And with this tax bill and the big, beautiful bill, although there was some increase in deficit spending, that was actually going to be productive and also increase growth, with which overall as an approach, the market views as positive. There's also a massive amount of liquidity in the system, and it's pushing into equities, and it's continued to push. The big push came statistically from what we see. The big push back into equities for this rally has come from the retail investor, which I don't like. So now we're in a position where we can go back to April 30th, which is this uptrend channel in red. At April 3rd, that was not the low, but we were down around 54.30 on the S&P. We're now at 63.40 on the S&P cash. We got a big push in from retail. Institutional investors have continued to let it ride and kind of leak out into it, which is fine. That's been the move. And what are they looking at? They're looking at a removal of uncertainty. They're looking at potential growth in private investments, CapEx spending. And we're looking at the Fed. The Fed has become another hot topic. It's been the shiny ball for 25 years. Rates are higher for the most part now than they've been for all but I think 6 or 8 months over the past 25 years. Are they necessarily high? No. Are they relatively restrictive? Yes. And I think people are looking for that Fed chair removal, a Powell to be slid to the side, and for rates to cut. I think, to answer part of your question, I think that is part of what people are looking at, and it will create a tailwind and additional tailwind to the market as we're once again really overvalued, massively overlevered. Negative credit in brokerage accounts is at an all-time low, depending on which way you flip the chart. But there's a massive amount of negative credit, meaning the leveraged loans, the margin loans are at all-time highs. And concentration for the S&P is again in the Mag 7 names. So you have 7 names carrying the index. They're accounting for 50 to 60% of the market move. That's just not a healthy market. That said, it's very easy to forget the fear that we had a few months ago, and the technical repair to the very aggressive technical damage happened much faster than I thought it would. And I think that there is upside to the market here. So what you see in this downtrend channel is we broke out of the channel, and you can see that all the way at the upper left. That gap down was pretty negative, but we held at a level which I had identified as support at 6,200 on the S&P cash. We held very, very firmly. It was a 62.14 low that day. We never revisited. We opened up the next day, and we've continued to move higher with some volatility. We're struggling to get back in the channel now. I think for me, the model is negative approaching neutral. I think we get into that channel. If I had to guess, if I had to say this is what I think will develop, and I don't think this is what should happen. I think this is what, if I can quantify what I think is going to happen, we would re-enter that channel, doing some work now that's healthy. Re-enter that channel, get a positive shift in the model, and I think the S&P cash could really head towards, with a push through 6,400, could definitely head towards the top of the channel, which would bring us towards 6,600. So I do think that's possible. I'm not saying that I'm trading it that way because I don't have all the pieces in place. But if I had to say what I think is a likely scenario, I think that's a likely scenario. I also, and I'll end with this, I have a spot VIX model signal. It's more anecdotal for me within the fund. I don't trade that signal, although I can, and I've back tested it and traded it at previous shops. It's an extremely productive model. That model is now 2 days ago shifted to a buy. So for that spot VIX model to shift to a buy for me, that was pretty telling that I thought we had some upside, and we've had pretty good upside over the past two days from lows to highs. That in place, us kind of knocking at the door of the bottom of that support level for that channel, and the trade model for the S&P shifting back towards a neutral stance as we're pushing back into that channel. I think it probably sets up, as crazy as it is to me logically and intuitively, I think we're set up here for 1 or 2 good headlines and momentum to kick back in and have us travel through this channel back towards 6,600.
That's a fascinating analysis, Anthony, really.
Thank you. It's, I listened to you talk about the BLS and statistics and inflation and monetary policy and balance sheet and open market operations. And I say, wow, that's, I try and make believe I'm following you and I can have the conversation. So I'm happy
that's good because I make believe I'm following you. So hopefully between the two of us, we have everybody fooled.
That's it. EJ, it was great talking to you. Congratulations. Whatever the result is, I would say congratulations on being in the conversation for such an important position, with such a history-making administration. It's a huge hat tip, and honestly, I'm just happy we're friends, and I really I'm in awe of where you stand right now, and just being in those conversations. I think it's phenomenal, and I think that if it does work out where you're there, I know you'll do a good job, and I know you do the best you can for this country. So appreciate you.
Anthony, you are way too kind. Thank you, sir. The pleasure is all mine.
Take it easy, buddy. Talk to you soon. Good luck. Keep me up.
All right. See you next week.